When you're scrolling through YouTube, what would be the main thing that you'd watch and enjoy? Is it a bunch of random videos that's plaguing your mind lately? A video a friend of yours recommended? Or maybe you just decided to binge a specific YouTube channel? There's a huge range of great YouTubers that make a lot of great videos on different topics and genres. Maybe you're itching for some video essay about plagiarism on YouTube for like the 10th time. A video that explores what made certain fighting game characters extremely broken. Or maybe you just want to listen to some music to pass the time. But what if that YouTuber decided to branch out from their comfortable nest of videos that the audience loves and enjoys, and into the deep unknown? What if they decided to explore some horror? This isn't a rare thing, specifically. More and more YouTube channels are branching out into their own specific niches of horror, and are happy to share the glory. I'm very much reminded of Markiplier and his recent directorial debut with Iron Lung, which is a horror video game adaptation. But maybe there's other aspects of horror that creators are exploring in, acting in smaller horror projects, creating their own ARGs, digital horror, unfiction, you name it. And analog horror. Today, we'll be looking at some YouTubers and their attempts into the realm of analog horror. What was their take on the genre? Did they bring any sense of style or something else to the table? Or maybe they just fell completely flat? So let's explore the dark alley of what the YouTubers have to offer in the analog horror space. Hi, I'm Meadow. You may not know me, but soon you will. Today, we're looking at some analog horror projects that were primarily done by YouTubers. But Meadow, I hear you ask, aren't all analog horrors are done by YouTubers? And yes, you may be right, okay, smarty pants. But we're going to be shrinking the net specifically to look at analog horror series that were done by the bigger YouTube channels. And just to set the criteria, the analog horror needs to be made by a content creator that were primarily known for a previous body of work, or another YouTube channel that isn't any kind of ARG, analog horror, or horror in general. Secondly, I won't be covering movies that are done by YouTuber turned directors, or just directors in general that are very much influenced by analog horror, so we'll be ignoring the recent VHS movies and Late Night with the Devil, so they don't really count. And thirdly, I will be missing some analog horror series made by other creators since I'm not aware of them personally, but if you think I missed some that were made by other YouTubers that aren't known for horror, then please let me know in the comments below. With that out of the way, let's talk about the first project, and for this, I basically had to do a ton of research for this part. A lot of deep dives and digging. Why, you may ask? Well, it's so that I remember it, so you don't have to. There was no better way of segueing into that, I'm so sorry. The Nostalgia Critic is a internet film and media reviewer who was well known for talking into the camera and making quirky quips, poorly acted movies and skits in the later years, and bad workplace allegations. However, he was surrounded by a cast of characters and other content creators on his website, channel also known as That Guy with the Glasses, where people like Lindsay Ellis, Todd in the Shadows, and Angry Joe got their foot in the door thanks to, well, Channel Awesome. However, there were two content creators that were mostly well known for appearing with the Nostalgia Critic as a trio in their reviews of Uwe Boll movies like Blood Rain and such. One being the spoony one, who is, and the other was Linkara. Linkara was essentially the Nostalgia Critic, but instead of reacting to bad movies, he reacted to bad comic books. He had a really good act that separated him from the other content creators that were part of the channel Awesome, and as such, had his own separate fan base, and He also made his own movie as well.
And while your shrieking tone frustrates me, I must admit I am curious. Are there any final words before I promptly delete them from my memory? Yeah. Bees. Bees? Bees. Ah! Ah! What are these? Ah! They're in my eyes! Can't see! Ah! Ah!
Not gonna lie, all of that was better than this fucking scene, Jesus Christ. However, since those days, he's moved on from Channel Awesome and has basically done his own thing nowadays, and both during and after his time in Channel Awesome, he made April Fool's videos to cement the occasion. And there's one recent example that we'll discuss now that was uploaded on April Fool's Day. Winter of '83. Winter of '83 is an analog horror project made by Linkara, and it was first released in sections on April Fool's Day, but it was later all combined together into one full film later down the line. As such, I recommend watching the full film for this. I did rewatch it for this video, and honestly, it just feels like a good 80s horror B-movie. Think Chopping Mall and Reanimator. And like many B-movies of its time, it's really campy, and I do mean campy.
Can anybody hear me? Look, we need help down here. Please send somebody to rescue us. I'm begging you. We're in the basement of Scott's Manor. It's getting so cold down here.
Please, you have to help us. They're going to bury us down here.
No. Tell them that. They'll think we're crazy. Look, we just please send help. We're in the basement of Scott's
They're
Manor.
gonna freeze us to death.
The premise is that there was an oncoming snowstorm that wiped out an entire town, but through old tapes that were left behind, it was discovered that the real reason for the destruction of the town wasn't weather-related, but instead, evil snowmen that can mimic humans. Yeah, you can see why I said it was campy. I think this campiness works really, really well for this project. It has this great blend of not taking itself too seriously, but also still taking itself seriously when it's important for the story to progress. It works super duper well, and I have to applaud Linkara for that. With regards to the campiness that works well, there are scenes like during a town hall meeting where the mayor just decides to roast the shit out of a TV station schedule. I don't know why, but I love this scene.
With all due respect, Mr. Frederick, I disagree with some of your assertions. You claim to be contributing to the community with your programming, but my family watches Channel 83. Most of what you show there is stuff found in syndication that you can find elsewhere. Frankly, those original shows leave a lot to be desired. They're cheap looking, the educational content for kids has been, well, wrong a lot of the time, and frankly, I know several local actors who refuse to work for you because they're embarrassed to be a part of such terrible shows.
There's one line that pops up every now and then throughout the story, but you first hear it during the section regarding Sid's Electronics, where as an employee is led astray by the creatures, you hear this.
Great. I'm hearing things. Look, Sid, you're the best boss I've ever had, but you've got to hire some more people.
Hey, can you help me with this? Hey, can you help me with this?
This line delivery just shows up throughout the entire series, but in some cases it can be creepy and terrifying, but in others it's just very funny. I'm not gonna lie. However, I need to share some of my criticisms with this analog horror series, because a huge chunk of the runtime is just voice acting, and the only visual shown is like a headshot of the voice actor explaining what's happening and nothing else. It's a bit plain on the eyes and very veers into being like a slideshow analog horror video, but I wish there was more variety there, maybe even a potential scare to go with it, like the picture moving or something along those lines. Also, the town hall meetings in particular overuse the spooky sentences in like a banner a lot in those sections. Like, way, way too much for my liking. This one was good, I'm not gonna lie, that one slapped. But one major strength that it has, that I mentioned earlier, is that it perfectly pairs its goofy campiness with some well-earned scares. There's a scene where an old horror movie is supposed to be playing, but instead it cuts to analog footage of a woman exploring a cold, snowy park. And for some reason, she is talking to someone called Alan, and she keeps using the name Alan all the time.
Alan, I love you. And I love this chance you're giving me. I'm serious, Alan. I absolutely love living where it's so cold. I'm glad you've let me be the one to capture all this for your B-roll, Alan. Hey, Alan? Alan!
Alan! Alan! Alan! Alan! Alan! Al! Alan! 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 Alan!
But after this, it's an unsettling change of pace, where the character suddenly has a run-in with the monster. She trips and falls, and sees a bloody skull peeking out of the snow, before being mauled to death, and then the creature deciding to use the voice of the lady to share some, what I can call snow propaganda or something.
Alan, I'm glad I'm empty. Alan, I love the chill. It's so cold. I'm numb. I'm so cold. I'm so cold. I'm so cold. I'm so cold.
Why am I reminded by Team Fortress 2 SFM animations? I don't know why.
Holy Mary Mother of Maggots!
Another part I think is really good is the Ode to Genomai Home Entertainment with the Lake Medicine Getaway section, where it cuts from cozy cabins to dark, empty, abandoned cabins. And then, after some build-up, there's just a bloody skeleton there. I love him. However, I really do like the graphic change. I wasn't expecting that. That was a cool change. And another thing I would like to mention for the last time would be the acting. Because on one hand, it is a mixture of campy voice acting that would fit well in another Channel Awesome movie, but there are some good acting at play here, especially Linkara near the end, because damn, that's good. I won't be playing it though. Please watch the series. You'll be surprised at the end. That's all I'll have to say. Overall, I recommend you check out Winter of '83. If you love your analog horror with a bit of campy B-movie flavor to it, then I recommend giving it a watch.
Yeah! Oh. Thanks for the help, bud. Thanks for the help, bud.
Moving on from comic book reviewers, we'll be looking at the best kind of reviewers on YouTube. You know, people who recap horror content and make entire YouTube careers out of it. Don't look at me, I'm exempt from this. One of these content creators who I actually think is pretty good is Pastra. Pastra is a YouTuber who mainly covers horror content alongside discussions and retrospectives on creepypastas like The Russian Sleep Experiment, Smile Dog, Sonic.exe, and Jeff the Killer, where I even decided to do a rewrite of the whole thing, and I've heard pretty good things about it. However, there's something else that you may know Pastra from, and that's the analog horror series, Dreams of an Insomniac. Dreams of an Insomniac is a analog horror series that's essentially set in the canon of Pastra's OCs and creatures. One of the first and most well-known of them is Clyde, Pastra's mascot. In the series, Clyde is, well, depicted as a demonic entity that could cause hallucination and just usually kidnaps children. I don't know why specifically children. Other OCs like the Lankman character and a big giant Winfrey character as well also show up a lot. But if you are unaware of them, then don't worry, because Pastra actually made a video 3 years ago talking about their OCs that involves Clyde and Winfrey and many other OCs that they made. Bring back Grimzo though, I love that little guy, I want to pet him. Going back to the series, the best thing that I like about it is its choice of colors. instead of the typical black and white and other plain colors that are relatively typical in analog horror. Pastra uses more brighter and more Halloween-coded colors, lots of oranges, yellows that make it really stand out from the rest of the analog horror series out there. Another thing is that it focuses a lot more on the live action footage, which is both for the first video and for the later 2 videos that we'll touch on as well. One of my favorite parts in the first video is just the guy who is just fidgeting like crazy, just going off about like fake news and shit.
Not even stealing money. If kids break in there, they're stealing at least some money. It's just another trumped up story for a small newspaper in an uneventful town when the newspaper company's probably running broke in a few months. I wouldn't trust a single bit of it. Pretty much nothing from that newspaper can be trusted anyway. Oh.
But then in another video, it's revealed that he's just simply an actor. Bro, you're the fake news. Third episode is where a lonely father tries to search for his son, but however, he gets led astray. And when he finally learns about what happened to his son, he encounters Clyde.
Help me though, honey, I can't find you.
The best thing about this episode is that outside of one image, which is, to be frank, it's just a bedsheet ghost, but in context it's kind of fucking horrifying, you never see the creature at all. Only the bright yellow light that blasts the character. Really good framing, really good lighting, cinematography is top notch, and a really good creature scare with the video footage replacing the images at one point. Pretty good editing, if I do say so myself. Other analog horrors, take note. Another thing I'll say is that the final video, as of this recording, is probably the best one. It's genuinely a good watch. Great voice acting, great cinematography, lighting, as always, is great. The character, Alex, is basically talking to the camera and sharing his experiences while working in the facility, but he's also bathed in this bright green light that later during a tense moment in the episode transforms into this blistering red. The lighting in the series, particularly in this episode, really reminds me of the giallo genre, especially with works from Dario Argento like Suspiria and Deep Red. And oh, the music. I haven't touched on the music yet, but I've been playing the music from the series throughout this entire section, and the music is done by Lyra Horrors, and it's just so beautiful. Going from this like nice, gentle piano piece with drums echoing in the background to this nauseating, droning electronic noise that completely unsettles the listener and is used really effectively during a police phone call situation. And then there's just a banger industrial track for some reason. Lyra did a brilliant job with the music, and the music made some of the more horrifying sequences in the episode all the more impactful. Overall, I loved this episode. The visuals, the aesthetics, just everything about this. Pastra really put their whole mind and effort into this, and it really works. I'm just really excited for what this leads into. Oh, sorry, I'm getting a phone call. Hello? Hello? Oh. Okay. Yeah, it's been cancelled. In a video that was released a month ago at the time of recording, Pastra announced that Dreams of Insomniac, in its current state of it being an analog series, was essentially cancelled, and there would be no longer any further entries. They explained instead that the idea would be reworked into a written work that would be posted on their YouTube channel with visuals to accompany it, similarly to how they made their Jeff the Killer rewrite. They also explained the issues of having a huge scope creep with the project, having writer's block. issues with how it all fit in, adding new characters and changing the designs of the characters, that just made it a lesser version of what Pastra wanted to make. And as a creative person myself, I can absolutely empathize with Pastra's thoughts and decisions with cancelling the series. However, I am excited for what comes next, as Pastra did tease that a new original analog horror project that's separate from the DOAI canon is being worked on. And seeing the visual designs and talent on display with Volume 1, I cannot wait to see what Pastra has in store. Let's move on from the world building of Pastra's work and let's enter what I'd call the mainstream of horror YouTube. There's a lot of people you can put in this, like true crime and such, but there's two people in my mind who remain at the top of this horror commentary scene, Nexpo and Nick Crowley. They are creators that have a combined subscriber count of roughly 6.8 million, and both of these channels have influenced a ton of smaller creators in making videos for this horror genre. While they weren't the first, they are arguably the most well-known at the moment, and both have spun off into their own ventures. Nexpo has a second channel that was ultimately cancelled. Nick Crowley had a second channel that was also cancelled, and Nexpo even had a podcast with Balance Studios that was also ultimately cancelled. A lot of cancelling going on there. The only thing that hasn't been cancelled yet is their ghost hunting channel, that is doing pretty well for itself and seems to have its own community and vibe to it. Unfortunately, I'm not a ghost hunting fan personally, but I'm glad they managed to stick with it this time around. However, this isn't their first joint project together. That would be Liminal Land. Liminal Land is an analog horror / ARG / clothing line. We're gonna get to that in a bit. It was released in 2023 and had gathered some attention from a few of the underground horror content creators at the time. The premise is that you're exploring the archives of an old decommissioned theme park called Liminal Land, where there are some different disappearances, rumors of sacrifices, and that the theme park itself was alive. It was breathing and contorting its visitors into horrific horrors like being turned into a grandma. The episodes consist of a TV sign-off where it references a real case that happened, which Nexpo also covered as well. I wonder where he got that inspiration from. Several employee training tapes like customer service and hey, don't go wandering into the basement, and police tapes about missing children and a ride that is messing people's faces up really, really badly. Alright, let's get this out of the way. The website and the first 2 episodes, maybe 3, 4, maybe all of them, I honestly don't know, heavily use generative AI art for its visuals. Before we can proceed with the rest of the discussion, I would like to say that generative AI sucks. Its datasets are heavily based on copyrighted and stolen material. It's more recently discovered that it's very terrible for the environment, especially with data centers that increase the energy demands and emissions, and the majority usage of it has been used to flood our social medias with, AI shrimp Jesus, misinformation campaigns, terrible AI cats being tortured, and many other examples. However, this usage of AI, while I can understand the reasoning for it at the time, now looks boring and gross looking, and not from a horror standpoint. Because of this, Liminal Land itself has had a lot of backlash due to the AI usage, especially more recently where Spaceman Scott's recent analog horror ranking video, where he decided to just go on a major rant about the project, and in the end, decided to not rank it at all. So, with that out of the way, I'm going to defend Liminal Land. Slightly. Hold your horses. Is the AI usage bad? Yes. Should they have started including artists from the get-go? Yes. However, this kind of AI is different when you put it into context. Back in late 2022 and early 2023, the opinions on AI were very different from what we understand of it now. The environmental impact wouldn't be known for quite some time, and the information regarding how the datasets are collected and gathered in regards to copyrighted material wouldn't really be common knowledge with the public until mid to late 2023. The AI generator used for the visuals of the series, the DALL-E Mini, was a common tool that a lot of people used to goof off and make jokes about how poorly and scary its prompts were. In the early days, the most scariest thing about AI was that one thing called Loeb, and now the most scariest thing now is whether or not mentally unstable people will be gaslit by AI chatbots into a psychosis. This isn't to defend Nexpo and Nick Crowley for using AI at the beginning of the series. I do believe these creators should be held to good standards, especially when it comes to potentially promoting these kinds of generative AI. However, with the context provided, it does seem like they just use the AI generator to just simply generate spooky images without thinking about the consequences. And also, if you want to absolutely hate on a series that uses blatant AI usage in 2025, Angel Engine is right fucking there. I have also seen people say that they like the AI usage because it shows that the park is morphing and more accurately shows that the park is alive, but I disagree with that. You can easily show that without resorting to the plagiarism machine, frankly. Also, can I just say Liminal Land as a concept is painfully generic? There's a lot of aspects of the series that heavily focuses on nostalgia and liminal spaces, which in horror has been done to death, and I've talked about it in a previous video. And the home section of the park is literally just the back rooms. It is literally the back rooms. Even the commercialization and adding homes and buildings inside this is literally what happens in Kane Pixels' Backrooms series. Like, okay. However, time and time again, I have seen people claim that they should have reached out to someone to help with the project, and I feel like that's misleading because in the later episodes, they did do that. In episode 3, the art depicting the malformations of the victims are done by the artist Omega Black, a talented artist that does creepy and unsettling images that really remind me of the illustrations from the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark series, and also helped work on that RATSHAKER game that was shown a while back. It also did the drawings and art for the 5th tape as well, and the 4th tape has the 3D and animation work of Geonosis, which from what I can tell from the videos that I've watched is a really good animator. So yeah, they indeed do that. They didn't do it at the start, and I do agree that they shouldn't have used AI in the first place, but I believe they learnt from their mistakes and from what I can gather, actually used actual artists and creators for their project. I don't like to think that they immediately meant any harm with this, because there's another example of early usage of AI in an analog project. Dreams of an Insomniac. In episode 1 and parts of episode 2, there were AI used to depict the children and the police officer in the series, and maybe some of the messed up symptom images as well, I'm not entirely sure, but the difference here is that Pastra did later apologize and heavily regret this addition to the project in their aforementioned cancellation video. Now, there is another question on people's mind regarding Liminal Land. Was it a cash grab? I have seen people who were interested in the ARG aspect of the Liminal Land who were frustrated that it was left abandoned with no word of what's coming next. Another thing was that when Liminal Land launched, there was a merch store that came with it. Since the announcement, Nexpo and Nick Crowley never spoke about Liminal Land on their channels ever since, and the only times Liminal Land were ever shown or mentioned was when they were wearing the clothing that came with the series on their ghost hunting channel. If you do go to the link now, it just simply redirects to the main ARG website, but back in the day, it did show a lot of the merch options, and some that I think also included the AI-generated images on the t-shirt. Not entirely sure, but I do think that's very tacky. With this shown, it is my belief, and my personal theory, that Liminal Land was supposed to be a clothing line first, and the ARG and Analog Horror series was to essentially promote the Clove line. However, due to a lack of sales or interest or what have you, they simply cancelled the project. Maybe it's to do with the AI usage. However, the fact there's no official statement on what happened with Liminal Land is pretty weird. Outside of Nexpo calling Liminal Land an old project on a podcast one time, there's been nothing. And I think that's a shame, considering the recent episode showed that the Analog Horror side could have been super good. But now it leads to nothing, and that's a real fucking shame. Considering that there hasn't been any statement or anything else about Liminal Land, so I decided to shoot my shot. I sent both Nexpo and Nick Crowley an email asking them about Liminal Land and their thoughts on the whole thing, what they think about the AI usage of the series, and if they ever consider coming back to it as well. I probably won't get a response, but as the writing of this script, they haven't gotten back to me at the moment, and I also decided to reach out to Omega Black as well, but it hasn't gotten back to me as well. I know I have been charitable with my take on Liminal Land, but I want to be clear once again. Generative AI is bad. Nexpo and Nick Crowley should not have used it in the first place. I also think that they should at least address it in some official fashion, since the lack of communication is really what is burning a lot of people at the moment. Also, if people don't want to engage with Liminal Land purely for the AI usage, then that is completely fine. I understand that they may not want to bring attention to it to avoid a Streisand effect, but I feel like the lack of information regarding this adds to this whole frustration that a lot of people have. I also want to give them the benefit of the doubt, as in a recent Nexpo video, he did negatively comment on AI slop, but I don't think that is enough to shut it down completely. So, Nexpo, Nick, if you are listening to this, please speak up. Talk to us about the AI usage. Talk to us about what's happening with Liminal Land and everything else surrounding it, because people are starting to get frustrated. And I hope you will have the hindsight to discuss it in an open way. That's all I will have to say. Okay, I spent far too long on Liminal Land. Let's speed through the other examples I can find that aren't properly analog horrors and more in the realm of like one-shots, ARGs, unfiction, the whole shebang. Like, for example, Spaceman Scott. Welcome back, Scott. Scott is who I like to affectionately call the Grungler of horror YouTube. He's mainly known for his ranking videos of analog horror, where he ranks them on a tier list and explains his likes and dislikes about the horror series, although a lot of it is stretching what you'd consider analog horror in my opinion. However, at the end of these videos, he adds his own analog horror section. So far, there's 3 separate ones. One is about an investigation into a family murder, and the detective finds a reel of spooky photos. Another is the horrors of knowing that the planet you live on will die and that this was preordained. And another is a sequel to the first one, but has a crazy crossover with another analog horror icon. These are fine. I don't really have anything else to say about them, as they're all one-off projects that aren't meant to go anywhere, and are just mainly just to show that, hey, this white boy can make analog horror the old-fashioned way. I do like Scott's content, so please check him out. Another series that I'll mention would be Sagan Hawk's video on that one creepy dinosaur game. It's a really interesting deep dive into an old forgotten edutainment game that I really do enjoy a lot. Why am I putting this here in the section about analog horror made by YouTubers? Stop asking questions, just go watch it. One final project I'll touch on as well that I've neglected to mention would be 10 Tapes, an ARG made by the YouTuber Jeffiat. You may know him for his SCP content and being obsessed over that one tooting skeleton. It's a really interesting ARG that involved a lot of player participation and was primarily done on TikTok back in the day, which is really cool and interesting. Jeff did a really good job with the pacing, writing, and scares of the series that I highly recommend checking out as well. I am putting it in this section, however, because 10 Tapes was made before he became a YouTube video essay person guy, so it doesn't really count in the scope of things that I've made for those videos, but please do check out 10 Tapes, it's really, really good. Oh, and one final thing. I was going to briefly talk about, Shelby Oaks. However, one, I haven't watched it yet, and two, there's some discussion/drama about Shelby Oaks that's currently ongoing at the moment that I would rather not partake in that at the moment. Maybe I'll talk about it some other time. I think that's everything I want to talk about. Probably... Oh shit, Blue Channel! Yeah, Gooseworks made Blue Channel Fallason. That's fucking good. Check that out.
Let's fucking go, baby! Let's fucking go! Let's fucking go! That's my fucking bear! Oh, that's my big baby Pooh Bear!
Now, with that out of the way, I don't think there's a good way to segue into this section, so fuck it. Let's talk about Greylock. I have such conflicting opinions and thoughts about Greylock. Greylock is probably the more well-known analog horror projects and is essentially about a lot of things. Government conspiracy, evil creatures that come from our mind, body horror, and so much more. When it is good, it is legitimately the best thing to come out of analog horror, period. Episode 7, Sleeping Dogs, and Episode 12, Waking Your Subconscious, are legit the best episodes that I can point to that showcase how brilliant the subgenre can be. But then there are other aspects of the series that don't work really well at all. One part is that a lot of the earlier episodes are super scattershot in what it wants to show and discuss. One episode you're exploring a crime scene, the next it's about home invasions, the next is about pregnancies disappearing, and so on and so forth. Up until the later episodes, these sections don't really come together in a cohesive fashion, and just leaves people confused, like, excuse me, what the fuck are the bodies falling from Cheshire? Care to explain? This isn't the case of, oh, we'll leave out important information to leave intrigue or mystery. This is just missing pieces of a puzzle that either has A, nothing to do with the story, or B, it is important to the story, but they'll cover it later. But with how long episodes have been, it will probably be several years at this point. I am glad that the later episodes are tying up loose ends, but I feel like this should have been done much earlier in the series, in my opinion. Another issue in the earlier videos is the video quality of the series. This isn't me saying that it's bad. It's quite good and authentic, as this uses actual VHS effects, and from what I can gather, it's actually recorded onto a VHS tape as well. But this authentic approach really bites it in the ass when it comes to single frame reveals where a major dump of text is just completely unreadable. Another problem with it occurs in episode 2, where something I like to call low quality audio that makes it sound like it's coming from the depths of hell itself.
Receiving countless reports regarding unidentified hostile organisms that we will refer to as alternates.
There's also pacing issues in the story, where in some episodes there are long stretches of no good visuals to accompany the voice acting, and these sections can go on for quite a long time. That It's just, majority of the episode is just a lore dump or some big long monologue. Episode 9 and 10 are big examples of this in my opinion. But then in the same fucking episode, you have the monster scene in episode 9, and that is brilliant. I love that scene. That scene is perfect. But okay, many people would consider these nitpicks, and I agree that these issues that I have are small in the larger scheme of things. I think it's time to talk about the major issue I have with Greylock. And that issue is the creator of Greylock. Enter Rob Gavagan. Rob Gavagan is a horror YouTuber who has been at this for a long time, with videos dating back to 13 years ago. But it wasn't until the mid-2010s when he started to get the foot in the door with reviews and top 10 lists of horror content, spooky disappearances, and true crime. There's also another series that he made on his channel, which we'll talk about in a bit, don't worry. If the name Rob Gavagan isn't ringing any bells, that's because in a video made in 2019, he changed his name from Rob Dyke to Rob Gavagan. Don't worry, YouTube, I'm a lesbian. I am simply reclaiming the word dyke. Plus I'm gay, so I can also reclaim the word fat. Because of his surname being Dyke, it caused issues with monetization to the point where he literally had to legally change his name to Rob Gavagan. Now, with the small history lesson out of the way, let's talk about what he's been up to lately. On Reddit, a post on the R YouTube drama subreddit revealed that Rob Gavagan was liking, replying, and engaging in anti-trans, anti-vax, and racist posts on Twitter. This has caused a lot of the analog horror community, who were primarily made up of LGBT and queer content creators, to distance themselves from Rob and his work. However, there are some issues with this post shown as well. Like, the first one is just a, this shrimp fried this rice type of meme that I would honestly post on Blue Sky or something like that. And some of the images on that post could potentially be satire or just out of context posts. So, okay, I want to give Rob a chance. I want to see if all of this was just made up or whether it's real. So, I decided to deep dive into his Twitter account, and oh god, that was a fucking mistake. Oh fucking lord. So, in my brief look on his Twitter account, he replied to a black gay man running for a position in the city council who had a slur sprayed onto his sign with the website fakehatecrimes.org, tried to do the whole slippery slope fallacy to a random post about Postmates talking about sex ed, claimed that the Democrats were Marxists that were planning to destroy the nuclear family unit, spread misinformation regarding the origin of the COVID virus, made several replies criticizing the ADL, and claimed that they are beholden to one group above all. Also, I know the ADL aren't the best. Like, they decided to defend Elon Musk that one time he did a fucking Nazi salute. Made a tweet mocking Taylor Lorenz after the whole situation regarding the Depp vs. Heard article she posted. For a good while, was a reply guy to libs of TikTok and shed a lot of anti-trans sentiment, especially groomer panic as well, and in the latest post that I can find, advocated to end the Federal Reserve and tweeted Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and RFK Jr. in his post. I don't know about you, but I think this guy might be a conservative. One tweet I want to point out as well would be a tweet he made regarding Canon Hinant, a 5-year-old white child who was killed in a shooting by a black man. With how Rob and several others he tweeted at the same time implied that this was a race-related killing and that the media didn't cover it due to those factors. That was not the case. There were actual media at the time that did report on the killing, and both the parents of the murder victim came out to state that the murder was not racially motivated at all. A lot of the tweets that I can show you were around from 2024 to around 2020, so a lot of it was very recent, but his right-leaning sensibilities were there from the beginning. because he also ran a series on his YouTube channel called Why Would You Put That on the Internet? A series that acted as a comedic roast approach to his content, but around the mid-2010s, this fell into a lot of anti-SJW content, where he talked a lot of things about those pink hats, otherkin people. Shout out to Varians, they're my goats. Literally, they're actually goats. And one of the funniest video titles I've seen in a long time. Watching someone die and and transgender bathrooms. He did end the series around 2019-2020, but a spiritual successor channel called The Dredgeworks was made alongside the Twitter account Royce Lopez, who also appeared in those tweets in the Reddit post earlier as well. Oh, what a coinky dink. Unfortunately, to save my sanity and to prevent the video from being longer than it should be, I won't be going over the channel and the contents of the video. But while I was looking through old posts, I also discovered that Dredgeworks reacted to a video posted by Project Veritas, which is an organization that, if you look up on Wikipedia, says that it's known for manipulated footage and spreading misinformation to the public. If you want to learn more about Project Veritas, Some More News made a video about James O'Keefe and also goes into Project Veritas as well. I highly recommend checking that out. So, why the hell am I talking about this? Why does old or newish tweets got to do with how our perception is perceived when it comes to the content we enjoy? And just to get this out of the way, this is not a cancellation attempt. I personally don't believe in cancel culture, as the only time this cancel culture affects people, it's primarily smaller minorities like trans people and people of color, while white men get off scot-free. Outside that one time. Also, just to make this abundantly clear, when I say cancel culture, I'm referring to the version that right-wing and conservative pundits think what cancel culture is. Me saying, hey, this guy might be a bit of a transphobe, isn't me cancelling someone. That is just me saying that this guy might be a transphobe. The reason why I bring this up is how political beliefs can influence the media that they can create. So, let's look at some of his tweets, especially his more conspiratorial ones, like the ones about the JFK assassination. One tweet mentions Operation Northwoods, a false flag operation that was rejected by JFK that would attack certain areas of the US and then blame it on Cuba to essentially start a war. Another theory that he holds is the theories regarding the Federal Reserve, where it was theorized that Kennedy tried to reduce the power of the Federal Reserve through executive orders that he made during this tenure, which is why he was assassinated. However, this theory has been debunked considering the fact that the supposed executive order actually gave more power to the Federal Reserve itself, so bit of a own goal there if that was his intention in the first place. So why am I bringing up those conspiracy theories? Well, those theories were mentioned in episode 9 of Greylock.
I'm here. Kennedy didn't go for it. He's gonna fucking expose our whole plan for the NII program. The meeting couldn't have gone worse. If that fucking Nick thinks he's gonna expose Simeodine, he's got another thing coming. But we're not the only ones he's pissed off lately. After rejecting Operation Northwoods, and then that executive order involving the Federal Reserve, there are a lot of snakes in the grass. And it's about time that Kennedy got bit.
You can make the statement that this is just a coincidence, that this was him putting this in his story to do some world building, and many other analog horrors do this as well. But let me tell you this. If you removed episode 9 from the series, what would change? In my opinion, nothing. Nothing story critical, nothing that the person needs to know. Outside of that one fantastic horror scene, you could remove this episode, and the whole series would not change. What I am trying to say is that a lot of his political beliefs is slowly seeping in through the content he makes, and, well, maybe that caused him to go off in the deep end for the first place. In one of the posts regarding a copyright strike his channel The Dreadworks received, he talked about Viacom being one of the 6 redacted companies that controlled the US media. I wonder what that redacted word meant. Rob, throughout his YouTube career, has been fighting guideline strikes, demonetization, and so many other things to the point that he literally had to change his name. However, this isn't an excuse, because there are a ton of other YouTubers who also dealt with this kind of monetization issue, and they don't become weird alt-right weirdos. What I will say is that his negative experience with dealing with YouTube, as well as his previous anti-SJW content, made it easy for him to fall down this right-wing rabbit hole and become so obsessed with anti-trans, anti-vax, and other kinds of shitty behavior that I am showing you today. These things aren't old and ancient. These are tweets and statements that he made almost a year ago. But Greylock wasn't made by Rob alone. It was also made by Matt Reeves Productions, who, from what I can gather, hasn't made any statement regarding A, his political beliefs, not that you should harass him regarding this anyway, and anything regarding the posts relating to Rob Gavagan. It is hard for me to recommend this series personally. If you want to separate the art from the artist and continue to watch Greylock, I'm not going to stop you. You can just watch the series and still enjoy it. But please think of the others. Think of what Rob has said and spread on his accounts. Think of that while you watch Greylock. In short, please don't be a weird alt-right weirdo and make a horror project in a scene where it's mainly made up of LGBTQ people. Thank you. Thank you for watching this video. I do apologize if it got a little bit heavy at the end, but I feel like this hasn't been spoken about properly on YouTube outside of a couple quips here and there. Yeah, I will say, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, a share, a comment, whatever you can to boost this in the algorithm, and if you want to see more content like this, then please subscribe as well. I would highly appreciate it. One final thing I want to mention would be Omega Black's fantastic work. His art is one of the most visually striking things out of Liminal Land, and I do believe his work should be supported, so I shall be linking his socials in the description if you want to check him out. And please buy RATSHAKER as well. I played it as background visuals for some parts of this video, and I never had a game experience like it in quite some time, so please buy it. It's really cheap on Steam right now, and it's only like an hour or two long as well, so give it a shot and tell them I sent you. Now, if you need me, I think I'll be making 10 videos about separate analog horror series with the title
"This analog horror is terrifyingly brilliant and made me go cuckoo crazy."
Ta-ta.
I'm cheesed to meet you too.